Okay, in this tutorial I'm going to give you the answers to this exam question down here, and I'd like you to possibly have your own, the answer you wrote, that you can compare what I'm saying with what you should have written. And then I'll look at the step 2 exam question as well. So you've been asked to talk about the weather in London, Manchester and Glasgow, but you've actually been given Manchester model answer, so that one's already been done for you. So the first thing you're going to say is in London, so let's deal with London, it's going to be raining, and it's actually what I would say, it's going to have steady rain, and you would say because it lies under the warm front. Okay, that would be your explanation. And that gets you a descriptive mark for the steady rain and an explanation mark because of the warm front. You'll be saying there will be only moderate, you might have even said gentle, winds. It doesn't matter which one you said because both are correct. And that would be a descriptive mark, and you would say because the isobars are far apart. And that is your explanation. You can add an additional third bit of explanation here, which is where you say London is far away from the centre of low pressure. There's the centre of low pressure there, and London lies quite far away from it. And therefore, if you said because London is far away from the centre of low pressure, it also is why the winds are very light. That would have got you an additional mark for explanation. Right, in London we would say that the winds are coming from the southwest, and that's because winds travel in an anti-clockwise direction in low pressure. That would be 1 mark for your explanation. You could also say for another mark that they travel following the isobars, which is why you know they're coming from the southwest. Okay. Final thing you want to say is that London would have full cloud cover because it lies under the warm front. And that would be your explanation. Lies under the warm front is the explanation. 100% cloud cover is description. Oh, and I should also say the temperature in London will be warm. And the reason for that would be description, is that London lies in the warm sector, which I'm highlighting right now. So this is a warm sector. It's part of a warm air mass. Okay. Right, now let's look at Glasgow. Okay. So what do we say about Glasgow? Well, Glasgow is going to have heavy rain. That's 1 mark for description. And the reason for that is it lies under the cold front. And that's a 2nd mark, this time for explanation. You would say that the winds are very strong. And you would be, that's a descriptive mark. And that you know this because the isobars are close together, which would be an explanation mark. You could also say, just like you did for the warm front, that because Glasgow is very close to the centre of low pressure, that's why the winds would be much stronger. And that would give you an additional mark for explanation. You would then want to say that the winds in Glasgow are coming from the west or southwest. Now, your explanation for this is the same as you gave for the warm front. This is all low pressure, so winds are travelling in an anti-clockwise direction in an area of low pressure. That would be your explanation. 2 more things is Glasgow is going to be much colder. That would be a descriptive mark. The two answers here. The first one is because it lies under a cold front, which will mean cold air. Also, because it's much further north than Manchester and London, it's a more northerly latitude, and therefore it's likely to be colder. That would be an additional explanation. And finally, there's going to be huge cloud coverage, not just 100%, but there'll be cumulonimbus clouds, and that would be description, and your explanation would be that these are the types of clouds that come with the cold front, and there's the cold front there. So that is a full answer that you should have been writing for this one. Now, let's just look at the next question. This is a little bit different. So we have Glasgow on our map, and you are asked to explain what's the weather going to do over the next 24 hours. This piece of information is also important because it means that our warm front, which is there, and our cold front will be arriving at some point in the next 24 hours. So the first one to get there is going to be the warm front, then there'll be the cold front which will come afterwards. Okay. Also, we must bear in mind that as this whole frontal system passes over, Glasgow will experience the warm sector, which is what I've just highlighted there. Okay. So let's just break down this question into the key things that we need to say about the weather in Glasgow. Right, we start with the temperature. Okay, right, the first thing you'd say is the temperature in Glasgow at the moment is cold because it lies in an area of cold air. That's this area here. However, that would be a mark for explanation why it's cold in Glasgow. It's going to warm shortly because the warm front will arrive, which means warm air will be arriving. That would be another mark. You could then get a further mark by saying Glasgow will then remain warm for a while because it's then in the warm sector of air, which is a warm air mass. That's another mark. You then say the temperature is then going to cool because the cold front will arrive. That gets you another mark. And then you can say, and then Glasgow will then remain in cold temperature because it's now in an area, back into an area of cold air, which I've just marked on the map. So there's 4 marks for telling me just about how temperature is going to change. All right, let's break down rainfall. Well, at the moment it's not raining in Glasgow because there's no front nearby. But let's see what's going to happen. Well, the warm front's going to arrive. So we would then say it will start to steadily rain because of the warm front. 1 mark. It will then become broken rain with drizzle when Glasgow is in the warm sector. That's the time it's going to be in this area. 2nd mark. Then there's going to be heavy rain when the cold front arrives. 3rd mark. That will then eventually stop once Glasgow is in the area of cold air and the cold front has passed. 4th mark. So once again, 4 marks potentially for telling me about what it's like to start with, what it's like when the warm front arrives, what it's like when Glasgow's in the warm sector, what it's like when Glasgow's in the cold front, and actually you can even get a 5th mark, what it's like once it's gone. Okay. Wind speeds. Well, the wind speeds at the moment are going to be quite reasonably strong. Okay. Because the isobars in Glasgow at the start are quite far apart. Well, they're not far apart, but they're further apart. As we move through this line, you can see that the isobars are getting closer together. They're quite close together there. And then actually when we're here, they're even closer together. So the winds are going to gradually get stronger, as shown by the isobars getting close together as the fronts. And the key explanation here, as the fronts passed. The wind direction. Let's talk about wind, because we talked about wind speed. That was what we were just talking about there. The wind direction, was it going to stay the same? Well, we wouldn't expect it to, because when fronts move, the direction changes. So at the start, our wind is southwesterly, but when Glasgow's sitting here, it will be a bit more westerly. So it's going to move from being a southwesterly at the start to being a westerly. And that's just to do, and the explanation is to do with the movement of the fronts. Okay, and what does that leave us with? That leaves us with the final part of weather, which is clouds. Oh, and we would be saying that in Glasgow it starts clear, then clouds build up. When the warm front arrives, it'll then be scattered clouds when Glasgow's sitting in the warm sector. Then there'll be cumulonimbus clouds with 100% cloud cover when Glasgow sits under the cold front. And then eventually it'll clear up again when Glasgow's in the cold sector and there's no longer any clouds. So each of these, when you actually look at this, I'm describing Glasgow and giving a reason for the weather there, 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 and there. So for every one of my elements of the weather that I've got listed here, I can actually give you 5 transitions it's going to go through. Okay, so this tutorial covered what you should have written for those 2 key exam questions. The reason I've given you the answers for these 2, you may have written those perfect answers yourself, but some of you will have not, and this will hopefully strengthen your knowledge about how to do this.